Thank you for all you're doing. I know you're going to have a tough fight, but we'll get with you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank all of you for being here. Y'all are kind of feisty this morning. What y'all been up to? And I understand that your chairperson, Miss Laura Harper, told you Edmund Edwards was coming today. That's okay. Look, I get along with him just fine, so it's all good.
Future President of the United States.
There's at least one LFT person out there who wouldn't like to hear that, and she happens to be my wife.
Oh, no, President, you.
No, it is great to be with all of you this morning, and I just saw Jackie. She said, Governor, you look pretty good. Well, I feel pretty good. I know they're beating up on me, but you're looking at the most popular Democratic governor in the United States.
That's right.
We're doing fine, and you are too. But let me tell you, we're not doing all that we should for you. You know that, and that's what Laura was just telling you. And I am aware of it. And so while I am so pleased with much of the progress we've made over the first 2 years while I've been governor, and because we really have, we still have these budget constraints that are on us, and it just makes it very, very hard for me to do the things that I think are necessary and essential and right. And I'm determined more than ever to get that fixed, and we're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all this morning. I spoke to you all while I was campaigning for governor. And you know, sometimes you see people when they're campaigning and you don't see them again until the next time. So I didn't want to do that with you all, because I told you then, and I'll tell you now, really it's the message that you just heard from your chair. I know what an integral role you play in the education of our children. Those school buildings would not be welcoming. They would not be safe. Those services that you provide are essential to the education of our children. And that's why I look at it as a team. And to a very real degree, you are all educators. And understand that sometimes there's a difference between teacher and educator, but you are all educators because all of you play a role in the education of our children. And why is that important? Because it's always been the case, but it's never been the case more than it is today, that education is synonymous with opportunity. When I was young, only about a third of folks needed any education beyond high school to have a solid path to the middle class. Now we have a requirement that 2/3 of our kids get some education, some skill certification, some degree beyond high school if they're going to be successful. And so the education that they receive that sets them up to be able to do that is more important today than it has ever been. And it probably is more challenging today than it has ever been. I am aware of that, and I want to thank you. And I want to make sure that we're in a position soon so that everyone involved in educating our children receives a pay that is commensurate with what they do and the importance of them to our society. That is not more true for anybody than those of you in this room. You know, for example, when I see what paraprofessionals make, but knowing what they do, there is a huge disconnect there. There is a huge, and not just the paraprofessionals, but that's one of the things that comes to my mind. So I want you to know that we have not made the progress that we wanted to make. Now we've kept things from going backwards, and believe it or not, there are a number of legislators who would love to remove the constitutional protection in the MFP and actually reduce our investment in K through 12 as a way to address our budget shortfall. I will just flatly tell you right now, that will never happen while I'm governor. And we are going to work to make sure that as soon as possible, we're going to be in a position to grant an MFP increase, and as always, we will be making sure that what 50% of that goes towards pay increases. And we're going to get there as soon as we can. So I want to thank all of you. I want to tell you about a few initiatives, and I'm going to spend most of my time on the budget so that you all know how to talk about it when you go home. And you're talking to other folks at school or in the community at church, or when you're out making groceries, whatever you're doing when it comes up. One of the things that we're doing, and quite frankly, Donna was in charge of this, and many of you in this room will appreciate it, I believe. There's a No Kid Hungry Louisiana campaign. It is sad, but here we are in early 2018, and over 270,000 children suffer from hunger in Louisiana every year. 1 in 4 of our children remain in poverty. And those are just statistics. But the people in this room, you look in those faces every day. And you know those aren't just numbers, those are children. And so it's important that we do what we can. The No Kid Hungry initiative that's led by the Children's Cabinet seeks to ensure that every child, regardless of income, has a nutritious breakfast and lunch. The first step was to launch the School Breakfast Challenge, which encourages schools to make breakfast part of the typical school day by serving it in the classroom through a grab-and-go style carts. And there are some schools that have done this, and many have not. I will tell you, I've been to the school where this happens, and there's a lot of pushback at first. We could think, oh, it's going to make a mess. We're not going to be able to control the kids. It actually works very, very well, and these kids can eat during homeroom whenever attendance is being taken. It only takes a few minutes, but it's a nutritious meal, and then they are better prepared for the rest of the day to learn. Their stomachs don't hurt because they're hungry. Their heads don't hurt because they're hungry. They're not excusing themselves from class. But the other thing is it's available for every kid in the school. So you don't have to take those kids who have free and reduced lunch and you do one thing with them, you do something else with other kids. And then you don't have to get the kids to school before class starts. And it works so well. And we are trying to get more superintendents and more school districts to embrace this approach. And we would appreciate your help in doing this because, as you know, breakfast, when it comes to learning at least, is the most important meal of the day. And it boosts academic achievement and attendance. And I just think we should do more for our children without making any of our children feel stigmatized or ashamed because they don't come from a family that can afford to buy that meal. So I want to do better with that. And by the way, the campaign is more than just breakfast. We want to make sure that eventually kids get after school snacks, stuff for the weekends, and we have summer feeding programs as well. And there's a lot of federal assistance out there to do this. We just have to step up to the plate and decide we want to take advantage of it. So we're going to be working on that. We also have something going on called Bandit's Book Challenge. And Bandit is the name of our golden retriever, and my wife came up with this. And if you visit the mansion, you're going to see him roaming around, and you're going to hear him upstairs barking. But we decided to name the book challenge after him to encourage students to get excited about reading and boost their reading comprehension skills. And we are so excited that we just did this for the first time. And we have 41,221 students who are participating. And they have to read 10 books that are not part of their required reading. 10 books that are on their grade level that are not required reading for school. And when they do that, they're going to get a certificate signed by me and by Donna, and just trying to make sure that they can have the opportunity, or take the opportunity, to read more. And I think that's very important moving forward. We're trying to get kids excited about that. Jobs for America's Graduates is another initiative. And despite the budget problems we inherited, in my first year we actually doubled the number of JAG programs across the state. We now have 123 programs. And they serve at-risk students, exclusively at-risk students. And so the numbers I'm about to give you are truly exceptional no matter what group of folks you're talking about. You can talk about all kids who are doing well academically and so forth. But these are all at-risk kids. They have a 94% graduation rate, 87% positive outcome rate, means they're either, when they get out, they get employed, they go into the military, or they go to post-secondary education. And 91% actually have full-time placement, meaning school or work, or combined for full-time. And we've got a long way to go in Louisiana. We're going to continue to try to expand this program. But JAG is working well here, and I would appreciate y'all's support. The most important thing going on in the state of Louisiana today is the budget. I want to just remind you where we were 2 years ago, and you'll get a better sense of where we are today. When I came into office, the budget deficit facing me for the first full fiscal year was over $2 billion state general fund. Now, that's the largest deficit in the state's history. We addressed that deficit in a balanced way with revenue cuts and savings. I have cut well over $600 million since I've been governor. We're saving $300 million on the Medicaid expansion this year alone, but we raised revenue for the difference. The problem was the legislature couldn't summon the courage to fix our problems on a permanent basis, and so they decided to do it for 27 months. Well, the 27 months runs out on June 30th. So in many respects, we're sort of back to where we were. And that's why the budget proposal that I submitted to the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget a couple of weeks ago is so horrendous. I don't want to make a single one of those cuts, but the Constitution obligates me to present a balanced budget. That balanced budget meant that I had to account for a reduction of state general fund in the amount of $994 million. That is a tremendous amount of money in the state of Louisiana. And so that's why we are there. What does that 994 represent? That 994 represents the difference in the forecast for the revenue we're going to have next year relative to this year. But the amount of revenue that goes away on June 30th is actually $1.3 billion. So I'm trying to meet the legislative leadership halfway. I'm not even asking for all of the revenue that's fallen off the books. We could use it, but it's actually less is what I'm asking for. And so when people tell you I'm trying to grow government, they're wrong. We are trying to be as responsible as we can be, but if we can fix that forecast cliff, we're going to be in decent shape next year, but I want to do it in a permanent fashion so we're not back here next year or the year after, and we need to have a revenue structure that is stable and predictable and fair that grows with the economy, because the economy is growing, and it's going to continue to grow in Louisiana. Today we have the lowest unemployment in Louisiana that we've had in 10 years. 10 years. We have wage growth in the state of Louisiana that's really helping. That's why the forecast is improving. For the first time in many, many years, we're not dealing with a mid-year budget cut right now because we've stabilized the state of Louisiana. We actually finished last year, the first full fiscal year that I was governor, with $123 million surplus. Next year, they increased the forecast by $234 million, which is great. That's helpful, but we still got a long ways to go. And I want you to know that I'm asking the legislature to do what it said it wanted to do, because when it enacted these short-term revenue measures, it said we're going to study this, and we're going to enact long-term reform before the revenue falls off the books. And they actually created a task force to study it and make recommendations. Well, I took those recommendations and gave them back to the legislature as the plan to fix the problem, and you would think I'm talking, some foreign language. They just can't summon the courage to do anything because they won't vote for the revenue and they won't stand up and say they support cuts. Well, let me tell you something. At some point, you've got to either lead, follow, or get out of the way. It is time for the legislature to do that, and we need some leadership there. Now, I happen to be optimistic that we're going to get it fixed, But we need to fix it in February. What happens in March? Our regular session happens in March, and the Constitution does not allow us to take up fiscal matters. But I promise you, if we don't fix the cliff, we're not gonna pass a budget in that session that starts in March. We're not gonna pass capital outlay. Nobody is gonna know what the heck is going on. You're gonna have students out there wondering whether they're gonna have TOPS next year. Parents are gonna wanna know what part of the tuition they're gonna have to come up with. Institutions of education aren't gonna know how much money they're gonna have. We're gonna have hospital partners across the state of Louisiana that won't be funded. And we're gonna wait till the end of June to do that? The new budget year starts July the 1st. And there won't be any options available to us in June that aren't available now. The problem isn't gonna go away or get better. We just need to summon the courage and deal with this now. And that's where you can help. Talk to your legislators. Call your member in the House and in the Senate and tell them you expect them to fix this problem in a balanced way, but once and for all. Let's fix this problem so that we can get about the business of governing our state and improving our state. Look, the future of our state is with our children. You all know that. You're committed to children. That's why you do what you do. But we've got to do better by them. And we can't do it if we don't have the resources. And I know that we can't do everything for everybody, both because it's not the proper thing to do, but also because it costs too much. But we can surely do better than we are. We absolutely can. And speaking of doing better than we are, you know, since I've been governor, we've expanded Medicaid in the state of Louisiana. As a result of that, I want you to think about what I'm about to tell you. We have 460,000 working poor now with health insurance who didn't have it before we expanded Medicaid. 460,000. And they have an opportunity to go to the doctor now, and they don't have to go to the emergency room, but they can actually go to the doctor, and they can be diagnosed earlier with the diseases that they have. And hundreds, by the way, have been diagnosed with cancer. They wouldn't know they had it but for the Medicaid card, or hypertension or diabetes. And you treat them earlier in that disease stage, you treat them more effectively and more cheaply. And they actually get a chance to be more productive and healthy and happy and stay in the workforce longer. But in a very real sense, they actually get a chance to live. And so I often say it's the same Catholic Christian faith that leads me to be pro-life on the issue of abortion that tells me that the Medicaid expansion is also a pro-life position. And so not only are we saving lives, but we're also saving money. This year we're saving over $300 million state general fund because we're accepting our federal dollars back. And it only makes sense for us to do that. So that's an example of what we can do when we work together. I can assure you that had my opponent been elected, we would not have the Medicaid expansion today. That wouldn't happen. And look, there's so much more that we have to do that some of them, quite frankly, we've been unsuccessful. The idea that we still have a minimum wage of $7.25 in 2018, that's ridiculous. We need to increase the minimum wage. We need to fix the pay gap. I see an awful lot of women here. It ought to offend everybody, not just women, everybody in the state of Louisiana that we have the largest pay gap in the country. On average, women make 66 cents on the dollar for what a man makes when they have the same job and they have the same experience and qualifications. But for women of color, it's about 49 cents on the dollar. And I tell that story and look, and they say, well, we don't know if they're measuring it right. Well, they're measuring it the same damn way in every state. So we ought to all be offended by that, because what happens? We are needlessly keeping people in poverty. And with the number of kids being raised by single parents, especially single mothers, every time we treat that woman unfairly, we are penalizing those children. Right. And we know that And you are dealing with those children every single day. You know better than I do what impact that poverty has on them. So let's do better. I'm more committed than ever. I'm actually more optimistic than ever that we're going to do better. But we have to get through these budget challenges because they are consuming everything that we're doing in Baton Rouge. And speaking of Baton Rouge, Larry was talking about the national situation. He was actually talking about an international situation a while ago. We had better never become Washington, D.C. where we have elected leaders from around the country that go up there and they refuse to sit down and talk and listen to one another. If one person comes up with an idea, if he's a Republican, the Democrats feel like, well, you know what, we can't possibly support that, and vice versa. The truth is the vast majority of the American people are somewhere in the middle of the political spectrum. And we better start fashioning solutions that come from that part of the spectrum and deal with these problems and move on down the road. As your governor, I will tell you, I stand before you a proud Democrat, but I'll work with everybody. And I will sit down and talk to them. So how we fix this cliff, for example, this fiscal cliff, you know, I'm willing to be very flexible. But there is no flexibility as to whether we're going to fix it. We are going to fix it so that we can get past it and start doing better by you and, more importantly, by the kids that you serve. And so if you will help me, if you will talk to those legislators that you have and get them, because I promise you other people are talking to them.
Yes.
Other people are talking to them, telling them, don't you dare go vote for revenue. Of course, they think we're trying to raise revenue. What did I just tell you? We're trying to replace $1.3 billion with $994 million. That's a decrease, is it not? And the only reason we're in a position to decrease is because we're doing so much better in Louisiana today than we were 2 years ago, with more people employed, more people making more, and so they're actually paying more in sales tax and in income tax. So we're actually more stable than we were. That's what we can do with a little bit less to fix the problem. But from that point forward, I want a structure to our revenue that will actually grow as the economy grows, so that we can start dealing with inflation, so that we can give periodic raises to our people who are working so hard, so that we can just do better by our kids. And that's important to me. I know it's important to you because you've devoted your lives to it. And I want to thank you very much for doing that. I will tell you that when I ran for governor, the very first groups to stand up and say, we're with John Bell Edwards, we're teachers. They were organized, educators, I will never forget that, and I will never abandon you. And that's why I'm so happy to be back here with you, talking to you this morning. And the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is just join your prayers to mine for our country and for the state, so that leaders at all levels will come together and better serve the people. And by better serving the people, that means we never forget the least among us.
That's right.
You know, it's terrible when you go to church and you read from Matthew 25 on Sunday and you go to work on Monday and you've got amnesia. You hear your priest or your preacher talking about Luke chapter 10 and the Good Samaritan, what it means to be a neighbor, and you leave church and you don't recall a thing. We all have obligations to do better.
That's right.
And to bring that into our work life. I'm committed to doing that. And it puts me at odds with people sometimes. Look, I get it, but I want you to know I sleep just fine. I sleep just fine at night because I believe we're doing the right thing.
That's right.
And this is what I will tell you about that. I don't ever say or even believe that I'm a better Christian than somebody who believes differently than I am. But I'll never take a back seat to them either. So let's work together, let's pray together, and let's succeed together so that our children and our grandchildren have every opportunity for success right here in Louisiana.
That's right.
If the kids you deal with every day decide for some reason they just want to leave our state to get a good job, have a rewarding career, get educated, God bless them. I hope they do well. But if the kids you're dealing with every day ever have to make the decision that they need to leave Louisiana to get a good education, to have a rewarding career or a good job, we have failed. Let's not fail our kids. We can do better than that. We will do better than that. God bless you. Thank you.